Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your AV tech questions 7 days a week. You can ask questions using Mukana. If you don't want Mukana, you can always use the QR code, which should be appearing right down there at askofficehours.global. Let's go to our first question. Alexander, what do we have today?
Oh, I don't think Alexander's reading today. I think I am. So the first question is coming in from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Talk about Matrox Vion, which is an IP to IP video gateway that allows conversions from NDI, SRT, 2110, and IPMX to other IP formats like NDI and SRT workflows. And he's got a link there to a Red Shark news story.
Sorry.
I think, Jason, you're tossing it to Guy Cochran.
Yeah, sorry. Screens got messed up. Yes.
Yeah, so the Vion was a product that was first showcased at InfoComm this year, and we had a chance to stop by the booth and speak with Wayne Andrews at length about this product. It's a missing piece in the marketplace. AJA did come out with the Bridge, which is similar, but at the $15,000 price point. Basically, a lot of folks were using that one to do like SDI to NDI conversions. This one, there's two different models. One does have some baseband inputs, so there's an SDI and HDMI to, there's IPMX, SDI, back over to SRT, NDI, JPEG XS. So all these can be brought baseband to IP, or there's another model that's just IP to IP. And pricing, I don't think, has been publicly announced, but when I was there, we were trying to gauge if it would be in like the $5,000 range, because I'd asked how many conversions could it do, like if I wanted to do an NDI to SRT, because I could buy a ZowieBox for $169 and do an NDI to SRT conversion, but not at this professional level. So Matrox is known for being a REMI solution. Their SRT products, like their Matrox Edge, is $9,999 for an SRT converter. So they're playing at this league up there with High Vision, and so this product's exciting for the right person. There's not too many people that need NMOS and IPMX aware products at this stage, but as IP becomes more and more the standard, you're going to start to see these conversions become necessary, because the way they explain it is there's different islands of protocols. So sometimes you might have one building that's all NDI and another infrastructure that's all IPMX, and then you need something to bring those two together. So you need a powerful, this box is called a gateway. It's not just a single, stream. You can actually program many streams. So when I had asked how many could you do, he said, well, there's a little CPU usage monitor in the web UI, so that you can actually look and see how much you're pushing through and at what rate. So it's an interesting product for interesting workflows. It just depends on what you're trying to do.
Next question.
Carly Johannesdotter in Fort Duchesne, Utah says, what are the group's thoughts about WebRTC support being added to FFmpeg?
Alex?
It feels like it's obvious. When the question was asked, I was kind of surprised that it hadn't been done already. So it feels like an obvious thing for FFmpeg to support. I will say that WebRTC can be pretty tricky. So the real challenge is people using FFmpeg thinking that, okay, now I'm going to add WebRTC to what I'm doing. Most people have found that WebRTC, the vanilla version of WebRTC, is not super stable and has a hard time traversing complex networks. So as a result, you just want to be very careful of thinking, I can start to use this. There's a reason that a lot of people use Zoom and other things, is because they do a lot of error control over top of the vanilla WebRTC. So it's great that it has support in FFmpeg, but I'm not sure that many people would use that, or anyone would use it at a large scale.
Next question.
Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York, up next. Morning, everyone. What email platform does the panel recommend for a subscriber list of over 2,000, and what features are essential when narrowing down your choice?
Jesse?
We use MailChimp for our mailing list needs, but do be careful when you're jumping in with 2,000 people. Make sure those 2,000 people want to be on your mailing list, not just for their sake, but for your sake, because if you push out a whole bunch of emails and then a whole bunch of people ping back, I never signed up for this, or this content doesn't interest me, you can kind of like bork your own email pretty bad and do damage to your back end by becoming gray listed, and that'll push a lot of your outgoing emails to a spam folder right away automatically.
Alex?
Outside of other integrated platforms for sending out email, almost everybody uses MailChimp. We use MailChimp. The email that you get every day from us is from MailChimp. It has a lot of it has to do with campaigns, so it knows, it has a graceful way of figuring out people able to unsubscribe effectively and subscribe effectively. You can build the MailChimp tools into your web page so that it automatically feeds into that campaign. You can build different campaigns, isolate people. I think that you can look at a lot of other ones. I literally don't know anyone that doesn't use MailChimp. It is kind of like it's the Google of sending out mail. Once you get over a couple hundred. When you do it under, when we started, when you do it under 100, you can, or under a couple hundred, you just group everybody 50 by 50 and you can send them out. But you'll start to get tagged. And what MailChimp's really good at is verifying you and putting those things, all those things that Jesse talked about are true. You got to be careful of how you send those things out. And you're always going to risk, as you do a mailing all the time, of it being put into spam filters and everything else. But I think that MailChimp is probably the one that has figured out how to traverse this better than anyone else. And they are very much the standard in the industry.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael. Waves has integrated their eMotion LV1 live mixing platform into a dedicated hardware console. Thoughts? And he's got a link to it.
Jeffrey.
I've been looking at this. It's looking very, very impressive. It's got 64 channels, 44 stereo buses, 16 original design Wave signature preamps, so you can switch between that. The only question that I have, well, first of all, you could actually create this all through other means. You don't need the hardware, but the hardware is just that all-in-one encompassing thing. But the question that I'm going to have at this point is, how will it act? How will it work with other things? How will it work with things like Dante, and bring that in to already set up infrastructures in there? But it was only a matter of time that Waves was going to go into the hardware game, and it looks, like I said, looks impressive. Can't wait to get my hands on it.
Alex.
Yeah, I think it's, as Jeffrey said, I think that it's something that you could build yourself. They're just making it more convenient by building it for you. This is still, my guess is that this is still Windows running on a PC, and it has all the all the things that are connected to that. There's probably no mixing solution that I've spent more time waiting to restart than Waves. That we just sit there waiting for something that it hung up, it did something funky. When it works, it's very, very flexible, and people do some really great things with it. We've done shows where I'm kind of holding on to the wall, hoping that the wave, because the partner brought in Waves, and just waiting for it to do something that I didn't expect it to, and then have to wait for 15 minutes for them to get back to the same state that they were in before. But when it works, you're like, wow, this is great. And then it's like Lucy. It works, and then it pulls the football away somewhere down the path. I wouldn't put Waves into a mission critical event, period. But for, I think, houses of worship and schools and stuff like that is probably fine.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas comes up next. Discuss PTZOptics' new ZCAM 4K Hive Studio and exciting new features like voice tracking on Move 4K cameras.
Jeffrey.
Well, first of all, ZCAM, you have ZCAM, then you have Hive Studios. Those are two separate things. A ZCAM is the 4K iteration of their Studio Pro, which was 1080p. It is not it's just a zoom camera. It's not a PTZ, but it's a pretty decent camera. I've used it in my setup. I got actually sitting right there. The next generation has not come out yet. It's still I'm still waiting for one, of course. As for Hive Studios, it's a great new tool that allows you to control PTZ cameras cameras from any location. So, like for instance, I could go to a church and I could set up PTZ cameras, and then every Sunday, instead of me having to dress up and go to that church, all I have to do is just log in via Hive and be able to control the PTZs. Or maybe one of the volunteers is doing PTZ support and they're running into a problem. I can log in and make the fixes that need to be fixed, and then send it back to them. So it's very versatile. We're still playing in the beta sphere on that, but I can't wait for, it'll be something that you could definitely make some money off of.
Next question.
On Oahe, Black Bear Marshall in Oahe, thanks for having an audio stream in the radio, but it's just sending silence. What happened to the show? Did I miss it today? Can't seem to find it tonight, so will the recording be uploaded later?
Alex.
Yeah, I'm guessing that this is from yesterday. So it's on YouTube, so you can always go to YouTube and see it. So if it's somehow missing, it's always on YouTube. It is also inside of Mukana. It's embedded into Mukana, but it's a public stream, so you can always go to the Office Hours Global channel. We're still figuring some stuff out. We're moving one of the things we're really dedicated to for the evening show for Extra Hours is that it all sits inside of AWS, or it sits inside of the cloud, and AWS is what we're using right now. We don't want to have any hardware dependencies to it so that it can be kind of set up and running. But that comes with us figuring some stuff out. So as we figure all of that stuff out, it'll all start to work. Extra Hours is still in its experimental phase as we start to put it together. I think Taylor is doing a great job of pulling things together, and we're getting a lot of help from Jeff and from Guy and many other people helping, moving all this stuff around. So we're hopefully, and Jonas, but I think that we'll slowly pull this stuff together. It might take the rest of the year, for us to get it to where we want it to be. So I'm just going to manage your expectations that things will be inconsistent until they aren't. This is, when we did 14 shows into Office Hours, we were still in Zoom, and I think that was about when Zoom went out. We all had to run over to Google Meet and then come back. It was pretty rocky. The funny thing about Extra Hours is for us a very slow iteration rate because it's only once a week. So things are progressing a little bit slower there. But the team is doing a great job, and we expect that to be pretty important. One thing I will say that we're going to research a little bit is look at Extra Hours from last night and grab the morning session of Office Hours. Extra Hours looks much sharper. And so we're going to take a look at why that is the case. It was mentioned that it looked really good. It's in 4K. It was mentioned that it looked really good in the show, or we talked about it maybe after the show. So I opened both of them up, and it's not close. So we're definitely going to pay attention to, and this is why you do multiple versions of things to see what's going on. But there's definitely something different about what Extra Hours is doing than what our morning session looks like.
Tláloc.
I just wanted to jump in here quickly and say, we're never trying to, on purpose, hold anything away from you in terms of the radio or in terms of YouTube or anything in the shows. There's a bunch of people that volunteer to put all this together, depending on whether it's Extra Hours or Office Hours or even After Hours. And so please just bear that in mind. And if you can't find it in one place, go look in YouTube or look somewhere else, because it's going to be there. Or and we really are appreciative that you're here and you're listening, but we really want you to know that there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, 100%.
And I will add to that anything that's on YouTube, you can use Downy to download. It's an excellent app. I believe it's Mac only, but it could be PC too. And that will allow you to just grab it and get the audio and then play it back at your leisure any way you'd like. Next question.
Carly Johannesdotter in Fort Duchesne, Utah. Thoughts about Simulcast and moving all compression to the edge?
Anyone want to take that one? Alex.
Yeah, so I'm not sure whether it's simulcast. The simulcast is a general thing, or it is you're looking for something that if it's a specific product. So let us know, what you actually mean by that by simulcast. Now, if you're talking about moving the compression to the edge, a lot of times, what I'm going to read it for right now is that oftentimes we send a very high quality stream. It could be SRT, ZCAM, using the elemental links that might be 20, 50, 100 megs a second into the cloud. And then from there, we compress it down into other things. So the key is that we want the box that's holding it to be much bigger than the box where it goes out to everything else. And so if that's what you're talking about, then that's what we do pretty often is to over-deliver to whatever we're going to use to simulcast back out again. We don't find that makes a huge difference with things like Restream or other things like that, but it does make a big difference if you're using something like AWS.
Next question.
Gabriela Estacio Messurera in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. OpenAI, in collaboration with Apple's former VP of Industrial Design, Jony Ive, is delving into a venture termed iPhone of AI, with reportedly $1 billion U.S. in backing from Softbank CEO Masayoshi Son. Please, can we talk about how it competes with Apple's own AI ventures?
Jesse, start us off.
As far as designers go, Jony Ive is kind of like number one on the list for me of, hey, whatever he's doing, I want to know about it just because it'll be interesting. And as far as investors go, Masayoshi Son is kind of number one on the list of, hey, whatever he's investing in, I want to keep an eye on that because good or bad, at least it'll be interesting. I think what's neat about this project is that it's probably going to be lighter and move faster and more free than anything Apple could build. So it'll be interesting to see what Jony Ive is designing after all his time at Apple without the industrial guardrails that come with working at Apple, and how that moves in parallel to what Apple is building with their incredible infrastructure, but also their kind of refined and confining aesthetic and worldview.
Courtney.
The information's kind of scarce on this association that's just been announced. Jony Ive is an industrial designer, so I imagine he's going to be designing some type of hardware interface for OpenAI that is multimodal, that has a camera on it, a microphone on it, and a speaker on it, so that you can somehow cut and paste information or take pictures of things and enter stuff into the AI to query it via a variety of modalities. It'll probably have no buttons on it. It may be. I think the rumor is that it's supposed to be less disruptive than the iPhone. I don't know what that means, but a means of interacting with AI that is maybe doesn't take you into the world of social media, but just let you interface with an AI device. Maybe it's glasses. Could be.
It's AI with a chamfered edge. Alex?
Yes, with a wonderful chamfered edge.
I think
it'll cost $3,000.
I think that there was a magical mix between Steve Jobs' practicality and what he was trying to do, and Jony Ive's, design sense and what he was trying to do. And I don't think we would have had the iPhone or the iPod or the iMac without Jony Ive's. I think the challenge is without Steve Jobs, Johnny's push towards design to a extreme oftentimes doesn't match up with mass marketing. And $1 billion is, well, that's what Apple spends every 2 to 4 weeks on AI. So you're going to have that for a whole year. So I think that it's going to be really interesting. I think that if Apple does what they're doing well, I think the real challenge is going to be that it's very hard to compete with what they're doing between the hardware, their own cloud, and then have, you have to remember the third thing that's there is really just a release valve that's there to can replace it with their own. And so I think that's going to be a really hard thing to compete with. Again, what Apple takes advantage of is the fact that they have an entirely integrated service. And that becomes difficult for other people to compete with. They're not really in any rush. They're just going to slowly lumber towards a solution that Apple users get faster results, more secure results, probably more accurate results 5 years from now. And that's about the speed that Apple needs to work.
Jeffrey.
And you got to remember that Apple Intelligence is not artificial. It technically is artificial intelligence, but it's a different type of artificial intelligence. Apple Intelligence so far has been basically making the iPhone work better. I don't think there is nothing that's going to do like a Mid-Journey type thing. You can do removal of items in a picture, but you can't ask for it to create a picture out of scratch as of yet. So you've got two different things here. I think Jony is looking to create something that's maybe even to the point where when Steve Jobs created Next, to create something else that maybe will end up back at Apple, and maybe he'll end up back at Apple. We'll see what happens, but it's definitely interesting to see how they're competing and working with Apple at the same time.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next, and he wonders, has anyone ever built an application with Amazon IVS? And he's got a link there to it.
Anyone ever used AWS to do IVS? Alec.
Yeah, this is their interactive service. It's got polling and some chats, and it does streaming. They're trying to find their way into it. The fundamental problem that AWS has is that they don't know how to make interfaces. So a lot of people aren't building these because the people that would build them aren't the people who would build this kind of thing need to not be in the AWS weird cycle. So we use AWS, and I don't imagine any other platform we would probably do to use that. But when you open it up, there's just so many things that are, make sense, I guess, to the folks at Amazon, but are just mind numbing. The way that input links work, the way that the way that some of the Media Connect stuff works, and it's fine if you're geeky. But the problem is that you need people who are building things, that are designing those things, to understand how to make this work. And I think that it's the way Amazon's back-end interface works is problematic for people to experiment and pick things up. And this is a place where you need to do that. I think they could do it. I think that it would be possible to do something that, like, they had a new wizard that came out that was just as confusing as the thing they had before. so it's just like, and it has a lot to do with, when you talk to them, it has a lot to do with resource management in the back end and lots of other things. And I understand that, but it's really painful it's better than writing your own code, and it's a platform that you can use, but it can be very painful to innovate, inside the platform. And I think this is a place where it has to be very fluid for you to put those things together. I think there's a real opportunity there for them. I think that the other drag on anything that's interactive with Amazon is Chime. Chime just needs to they need to throw all the code away and find a new team and build it all from scratch again. Like, I don't know what they bought that for or what they were doing there, but it's just the worst. So I think I think those are and again, we're using AWS for extra hours. It is the best solution in what it's doing. Obviously, they're doing something right because they keep on making more money. So I'm not saying that it's not working, but I'm just saying that when they try to go down these paths of some kind of new innovation, a lot of it, they're losing probably 99% of their flow by making it difficult to actually develop on the platform for a wider group of people.
Couldn't agree more. Next question.
Next one comes from David Brady at New York City. Logitech MX Creative Console looks to be an interesting and customizable control surface. What other creative uses can you think of? And he's got a link there to it.
Courtney.
I'm not sure what to make of this. It looks, it's basically looks like a combination of a 9-button Streamdeck and a knob that you could program to use anything. I guess it's just a USB interface or maybe a Bluetooth interface for this. $199. Its compatibility, they don't say much about it and what programs it works with. It says it's compatible with a number of programs, but it doesn't mention them. And it is cross-platform. They have drivers, of course, for Windows and Mac, and that's about all I've been able to derive from it. I guess you can launch different programs. The web page there shows the Adobe Creative Suite link to it. So maybe you can launch each of those applications with a single keystroke or macros that you can build into this, and you can maybe use the knob for adjusting levels. Just maybe use a standard MIDI protocol over USB. I'm not sure.
Jeffrey.
So when a couple weeks ago, when Streamdeck came out with the rack-mounted Streamdeck, I was on the show. I was talking about how different companies are creating their own control surfaces, and this was one of them in particular. What I really love about this is you have a wired button system, and then you have a wireless control panel that you could put on the other side of your keyboard. So you could have left hand pushing buttons, right hand doing the dial. So that makes, or give it to somebody else, and then they can take care of that, and then do a whole bunch of customization with that dial to do different things like volume or I don't know. Everything's a limit there. But I like this thing. I don't like the fact that Logitech is putting it out. Logitech reminds me of Yahoo, and Yahoo used to buy up companies, and then they'd look at it for a little while, and then they just kind of throw it away. And Logitech seems to do the same thing. They buy products, and then they do a little bit of tweaking to it, but then they kind of forget that it exists. So I have a feeling that, this would have some small updates to it, but it might be forgotten unless it's a really big seller. Mevo was a big seller for a long time. They finally made that 4x3 version, but it took a long time for that to happen, and everybody had to use that older camera. The Logitech 920, it goes on and on. But I hope that they really take some serious thought into this and come out with 32 buttons and joysticks and T-bars and everything like that to really make a production at a desktop pop.
Guy.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're in a world where we're used to using the Stream Decks for live streaming and for pushing buttons for cutting and whatnot. But when I first got the Stream Deck, I started showing it to people in the company, and we started using them in shipping. So repetitive things that were going on all the time, these fields that needed to be populated, even in customer service, just like the greeting of an email and the summary, the ending with signing your name and whatnot. It could just be a push of a Stream Deck button. So there's other functions in just the regular Elgato world where people have used the software for routine daily things, and I think Logitech has picked up on that. I mean, you walk into a Best Buy and there's Logitech here and there and everywhere, microphones, keyboards, whatnot. So I think that they saw what's going on with Elgato, and they're like, all right, we got to get in on this. But as we saw at IBC, I'd love to see the numbers now as to how much of the broadcast market versus the consumer market is Elgato's numbers, because they made an investment basically in Bitfocus, and Bitfocus is now charging for buttons. So buttons is a paid service. So the Bitfocus team is now in with Elgato. So, and I don't think that Logitech is going to be able to infiltrate that market now that they're that embedded in. So it'll be interesting to see how these pan out over the next 5 years as to who will win. It'll be like what? Yeah, I don't know if Logitech's going to win on this one unless the consumer market adopts it.
Alex.
I think it's really interesting that the Creative Console, I really like the dials, to be able to do it. I do have the Plus or whatever from Elgato. Never really used it as much. Just the interface, the way it worked, didn't pan out the way I thought it would. It'll be interesting to see how Logitech does this. I think a large portion of Logitech's buyers probably don't know that a Stream Deck exists. It's really, they're so big, and Elgato is still pretty small. They're big to us. We all have them. I have 5 or 6 Elgato. 5 or 6. I have the 32 and the XL, and I have a 6 here for my presentations. I have a lot of things that are all available to me, so I use them a lot. But I will say that I think that there's a lot of creators who are just getting into this that don't know what Bitfocus is, don't know what Companion is, don't know what any of those things are. Use the vanilla product, and the vanilla product running up against this, if they just want a couple things to do. And again, for creatives, the dials that are being provided for $199, which is $199 is for the pad and for the dials, is a pretty aggressive pricing structure, and it's something that Logitech can do that Elgato probably can't from an industrial design perspective and mass production perspective. So I think what's great for us is that it's great competition between the two, but I don't think Logitech's necessarily going after the broadcast market, And I think that the Elgato kind of fits between where Logitech is and where JL Cooper and others that are building like real interfaces are there. I mean, Elgato's cute, but it's like in between like real buttons with real LCDs and Logitech, which is much more of a consumer creator perspective. But I can definitely think where I think that Elgato probably won't make progress is Companion, Bitfocus, those type of things. I think where Elgato will make a lot of inroads is integrating with lots and lots of creative software, because they have a lot of those contacts already there.
You mean Logitech, not Elgato?
I'm sorry, Logitech. So, Elgato will have the Bitfocuses and the Companions and the more geeky solutions, which a lot of us use. Logitech is going to go after making sure that it works in Logic and, Photoshop and everything else. And they're going to be able to tie that very, very tightly together. And you can do that with Elgato, but it's not, I bet you Logitech will be a lot tighter, because of their focuses and their size and scale. So it's going to be two different things. I think that it's going to be really interesting. Again, I'm less interested in the buttons. That looks like another, Streamdeck. Really interested in the dials. So of what we can do with that when you're editing a variety of different things. So that's what I'm going to be focused on there.
Just a reminder, this show is run on your questions. So this little QR code down here will bring you to askofficehours.global. And if you follow that, you can submit questions to us. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas, and he says, does the Apple Pencil work on an iPhone?
Bill, start us off.
Well, our favorite answer on Office Hours is it depends. I pulled out my original Apple Pencil and I pulled out my iPhone 14 Pro and I fiddled around for a while and I got nothing. Then I went out on the web and I looked a little bit and they said there are hacks that allowed this generation to work with it. Now, if you're in the newest generation, Apple Pencil 2 and the newest phones, my suspicion is they've integrated it a lot better. So right now, if you have particular hardware and you want to try to make it work, do your due diligence, do some research, and figure out whether you can find online people who are succeeding with the combination that you have. I suspect that it can in the newer stuff. It does not very well at all, and I was unwilling to download and test miscellaneous solutions that I saw on the web for getting the older pencils to work with the older phones. So buyer beware.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Tláloc.
No.
That's very good. Next question.
Next question comes from Mark Steele in Orlando, Florida. Fantastic second hour yesterday. Curious as to what that kit that Jason Kairalla included for each of the panelists, mic, camera, telestrator, lights, and so forth.
Tláloc.
I'm not entirely sure what he included in the kits, but I just wanted to say that I really second that idea that it was a fantastic second hour. It was outside of our bailiwick in some ways, but the experts were really right on about what they knew, and it was something I had been curious about for a long time, and I'd like to have a little bit more of a deep dive if everybody agrees with me. I just think it was fascinating.
Bill.
A good example of great shows come from great guests. Jason did a fabulous job of assembling the judge and 3 attorneys who have vast amounts of experience with technology into the courtroom. And we can all kind of see this happening ever since the pandemic, when suddenly we saw little snippets of remote jurisprudence with people kind of attaching themselves through exactly what we do every day into courtrooms to do official proceedings because they couldn't have them and the justice system needed to move forward. And I think that woke up the entire legal industry to the fact that this is going to become more and more important as time goes on to allow better access to trials and to the system from everyone. And our guests yesterday were fabulous. It was a great show, and it was a pleasure to be involved in it.
Tláloc, more thoughts?
I just wanted to come back. I heard from the back end that they had Insta360 links, which just meant that the back end could actually frame them up through the Zoom camera control, which was really great because there were a couple of framing things. So and it just makes it so much easier to be able to deal with those sorts of things. Very cool.
Very cool. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, it's interesting that a mobile operator, Softbank, is investing in an AI company. Would that be a way to gain a stake in more of the stack, so to speak?
Alex.
SoftBank invests in a lot of things. So SoftBank has a mobile thing, but they invest in many. They invested in WeWork, so they do lots and lots of investment across lots of many things. A very, very large company that puts a lot of stakes into a lot of things that they're trying to, take advantage of, like any other venture capital firm.
Jeffrey.
Exactly the same thing. Even DoorDash, that's a SoftBank company. So everything is going to help improve that. And of course, they're picking up where Apple decided not to go to. And they only invested $500 million, which is a pittance, to a $6.5 billion investment that they're looking for. And I have a feeling that SoftBank will probably invest a little bit more after a little bit of time trying to figure out how it's going to incorporate. But of course, AI is everywhere, and from creating your data center to creating your next resume to ordering food, being able to, and this is something that Amazon's working on, creating AI to make sure that all your if you have like 5 packages coming to your door in one day, they want to have AI coordinate that so you don't have 5 different drivers show up. You have one driver with 5 packages showing up. Same thing with DoorDash, because they're now experimenting or using the idea that you can order food from one place and then have them go to the convenience store and get some soda because soda wasn't at the restaurant, and then come to your doorstep. If you do that now, you usually get 2 drivers, but they want to set that up so one driver comes out. That's where AI is going to really come in. So it's a good investment for SoftBank to get in on that, and so they can really build into their companies.
Alex.
Yeah, and they're probably taking it a little bit slower than they have in the past. They lost somewhere between $6 and $10 billion on WeWork.
Whew. Oof. Next question.
Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas. What's your pick for best new production tech for this year?
Jesse.
Boy, has it been a year of iterations. Nothing really turning things upside down. I think the Vision Pro is interesting in production tech, but it's a long-term play out for that before it really kind of hits its stride. And the other thing that was very interesting was the announcement of Blackmagic's stereo camera. The things like the Rodecaster video with all the different features we've been wanting from Blackmagic are interesting. It's all stuff that feels like it's going to push the industry forward, but is not the exact thing that it's supposed to be quite yet.
Courtney.
Yeah, I also like the Rodecaster video. It remains to be seen whether or not they're going to iterate and come up with new versions of the firmware that solve a few of the problems and generate a published user interface. So an API would be handy to have for that, so that we can get third parties to develop the macros and stuff that interface with that. Another thing I was going to say is the DJI. They've kind of democratized the drone here at $199 with this autonomous drone that can also be flown as an FPV and is 130 grams, I think. So it's license free. It probably won't. It has built-in prop guards, so it probably won't cut up or damage anyone you fly it into or damage itself. Unfortunately, I guess it was so popular that it's now out of stock at the DJI store. So that means they probably sold out their first production run of them already. So we'll have to wait until they make some more.
Alex, what do you like?
I think that the interaction between the Apple Vision Pro and the new Blackmagic camera will be really interesting to see when we get later this year. Blackmagic still is projecting that they'll have it released sometime before the end of the year. I have talked to I've looked at a bunch of the footage, and not from the Blackmagic camera, but from cameras similar to it, and it's an entirely new. We just want to look at the beginning of an entirely new content production. Up until now, doing left and right eye has been an art project. Left and right eye hemispheres, and I've been in that art project for a decade. so it is, and it's always complicated and it's always hard. We have to understand that a lot of times technologies don't come out until the interface gets fixed, until it's easy to actually produce the content. When you're talking about a camera that's going to be relatively inexpensive, being the Blackmagic camera, probably less than $30,000, maybe even less than $20,000 a unit, and then you're looking at integrated tools that are going to work with that camera inside of Resolve. That is going to be a really interesting production pipeline, both for the Apple Vision Pro as well as for the Meta, Quest. And it is a very compelling format. And if the resolution actually gets to 8K per eye at 90 frames a second, people are really going to want to see a lot of this. I can tell you, most people have not you, but most people have not seen that kind of frame rate and that kind of resolution. And I have, and I can tell you that you just want to see everything that way once you see that kind of footage. And so I think that you're going to find that, I think we're going to see new people making movies that are only designed for this kind of platform. You're going to see a lot of things, but up until now, it's been very difficult and very wonky and very weird to build this stuff. And it's about to not be that way. So we want to keep our eye on that development.
Yes. Next question.
Khalid Al-Jamaya in Hassa, Saudi Arabia. Good morning, office hours. What's your recommendation for the best software to use for online meetings in 1080p in 2024, particularly for a small group without having an enterprise account?
Alex, what do you think?
So you don't need an enterprise account for Zoom. I still think Zoom is at 1080p. Zoom is the best solution out there. I think you're not going to find a better meeting solution than Zoom. But if you're requiring 1080p, what you do need is, I think, 10 licenses of the business, so it's $200 and some a month. But you don't need to go to the full enterprise solution to get that 1080p. If you're looking for 1080p, I think that you are, and there are good reasons for it. For instance, if you have people cutting and showing stuff on their screens like we do, and you want to actually be able to read the text, then 1080p becomes pretty important if you're not going to use screen share for those things. And so those are some of the examples of that. And some people just really like to have 1080p. But if you really need it, 720, of course, you can get with just a phone call or a support ticket to Zoom. So just know that 720p everybody can get as long as you ask for it. I think that the concept is, if you don't notice the difference, we're not going to spend the money on you. But if you notice the difference and send a support ticket in, you'll get 720p. If you need 1080p, then you should expect it to be $250 a month or whatever, or something in that range, to buy your 10 business licenses, and then you should be able to get 1080p from there.
Tláloc.
Yeah, I think Alex nailed it. Just a matter of, if you have a pro account, that's the first thing to do, is to ask for that 720p. And get upgraded to that level. The other thing is, if you have an event that you really need 1080p in, if you have the somebody else with a 1080p enabled account own the meeting, your account doesn't actually need to do that. So have somebody with a 1080p enabled account own the meeting, and then you can have 1080p just as you need it.
Jeffrey.
Offer some other solutions, but I noticed that you're in Saudi Arabia, so maybe some of those solutions won't be usable for you. But StreamYard and Restream both suggest that you can use these devices for online meetings, and especially meetings that you want to keep more in-house and with recordings. And they, like Restream, also does ISO type recordings as well. So that could be an alternative if you're only talking just a handful of people rather than a really large company.
Alex.
Yeah, and I'm on most of these platforms, most of the WebRTC meeting platforms. Any given week, I'm usually on all of them at some point in time, because some partner or client puts them. There's nothing like. Nobody's close to Zoom at this point. I mean, it's just, they're all wonky, so I don't think that there's a lot of competition right now in that process. I also would be careful of StreamYard. they were bought by another company, and they're dealing with a massive user exodus. I mean, everybody that I know using StreamYard is trying to find another solution. So that's something else to keep in mind. And that's really more for a broadcast of things, not really meetings. It depends on what you're trying to do. But if you're trying to do meetings, that might not be what you're looking for.
Guy, real quick.
Yeah, I think we're all in love with Zoom and just the way that it works. In the gallery view, you're not really going to see 1080 anyway, so it depends on if you're doing records. And if you're doing records and you want them to look the best, Riverside's actually the way to go, because Riverside has way more color fidelity because it's moving at a faster bitrate.
Next question.
Zach Stallsmith, Chautauqua, New York. I have an active NDI bridge connection going from on-site house of worship to my home studio. Could an NDI PTZ controller at my home control the cameras remotely, and is there extra setup required?
Guy.
Yeah, make sure that it's an NDI actual controller, because there is Visca as well, and there's some other protocols that can move through IP. But if it's NDI, it will appear, and you can also just very easily with in Studio Monitor, just by choosing Xbox controller, you can use one of these gaming controllers over USB and have control over those cameras as well.
Courtney.
Question for you, Guy. Wouldn't it have to use NDI HX, and wouldn't the latency be too high to try and use a joystick to control a remote camera? Because you'd have like 300 milliseconds of latency, so you'd overshoot.
There will certainly,
undershoot.
Yeah, there's actually a buffer that you can adjust, but NDI HX3 moves really fast. In fact, there were some tests where NDI HX3 moved faster than full NDI. So it depends on your hop. So like I have a really robust connection where my latency is 0.9 of a millisecond. When the installer came over, he had never seen it before, less than 1 millisecond. So it depends on where you're going to, and so what's on the other side as to what your connection is, as to what kind of delay. So mine's super snappy. When I go to AWS, everything's just bap, 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 bap. It's like local.
But the encoding itself isn't, doesn't that take time? The more compressed you make it, doesn't it take longer to compression?
That's what I'm saying is the NDI HX3 is super fast. It just happens instantly. I mean, it depends on the speed of your computer, but yeah, the qualification for NDI bridge is that you got to have either an ARC card, an NVIDIA card. So those are already tested to be approved. It won't even launch. Like you won't even have the ability to. It'll basically tell you unsupported graphics card. So you wouldn't have the processing power.
Is done in the graphics card. Yeah, okay.
The encode is done in the graphics card. The decode's automatic. That can be handled on with no hardware. That's just a regular processing thing for the decode side.
Okay. Thanks.
Next question.
Zach Stallsmith, back from Chautauqua, New York. I want to start using Bitfocus Companion Satellite for remote operating work. Is anyone utilizing this in their workflow, and what are the pros and cons?
Tláloc.
We used this about a year ago with conversations with Tony Mobley in order to give control to our TDs to the to vMix in the cloud, and it was great, and it worked really, really well. You just hook into to the companion satellite, and all the buttons propagate on your Streamdeck, and it's a really, really good way to sort of send out the possibility of people in the wide access network to TD your show. It's a good way to work.
Next question.
Ronnie Hofsoy in Tromsø, Norway. What are the pros and cons of the ZowieBox from Zowietek compared to other more expensive encoders? What makes this special except the price point?
Guy.
Yeah, it really is the price point, because I have Kilo views that are NDI HX2 that are way more expensive, and they only move one way. So one of the big benefits, well, a couple things. In addition to just being an NDI encoder, it's an SRT encoder, it's an RTMP encoder, but it's also a decoder as well. So you can just, if you want to take HDMI from one end of a building and put it on the other end, you can have two ZowieBoxes and do essentially point-to-point where you have an encoder and a decoder. Most of these boxes, they only move one direction. They're either an encoder or they're a decoder, not both. So for $169, and actually now they bumped them up and they're $189. So they're not as cheap as they once were. But I mean, this is what it looks like, and it's a 4K. Like I've done, so that's the other benefit. The other Kilo views, once you step into the 4K world, it's way more expensive. The other nice thing is it does have the display on the front, so you can see what the IP address is. It does have a loop in and loop out, and then there are PTZ controls that you can do with the GUI, and there's an overlay as well if you want to just add like a super over the top, like a logo or something easy. The other nice thing is in 4K mode, I've used this as a 4K contribution from ground to cloud. So you can put, so I bought a little $200 4K slicer, essentially, that'll take 4 1080s, and then I can SRT those up to the cloud. So this box for $189, coupled with this other $200 box, allows you to send 4 in-synced feeds up. It's very cool, and it's pretty low overhead, low bitrate.
Next question.
Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. Hey, Guy, I was wondering about that huge touchscreen you were standing in front of on Friday's show. What was the size dimensions? Seems like the perfect size for homeschoolers and teachers, even with or without touch abilities.
Yeah, agreed. Guy?
Well, that one was an expensive one. That was a Christie, but you can get nowadays a Dell, or Keenan had actually shown this ViewSonic. So for their emergency response, their guys were super impressed. For under $4,000, you can get a 75-inch touchscreen where during a map session they can zoom in and zoom out. It's really impressive when you have the ability to not have to use a mouse when you're presenting in front of a bunch of people. So yeah, the one that I was using was a touchscreen by Christie.
Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia, is looking for a $1,000 streaming system for teachers or a small church. Recommendations?
Tláloc.
So I think you could possibly get somewhere at $1,000 or even $500, but then by the second week you'd spend more than that because you'd realize you don't have what you need. And you want to expand on it. You want to make it better. So I think the answer is no, because I think you need if you're trying to do something for a small church, if you're trying to do something for a teacher, I think they need to put a little more money into it than that.
Next question.
Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas. What's the best vendor for Ubiquiti products besides Ubiquities?
I'll cover this one. There isn't one. Ubiquiti, especially if you're getting the newest stuff. I don't think you're going to get a third-party reseller because Guy's not in the game anymore. So, yeah. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. Have any of you had experience using the IPv6 in production? It seems that most production equipment still only supports IPv4.
Alex.
It's kind of all or one. It's an all or nothing kind of thing. Oftentimes, you're either doing everything in your pipeline supports IPv6, or you go back to IPv4. It's very hard to get folks to do part of one and then part of the other. And as a result, it's lowest common denominator, which is still IPv4. That probably will be still the case 10 years from now.
Yep. Next question.
Tony Mobley's coming back from Noonan, Georgia. Can Tláloc give us an update on his travels and the work he's currently doing? I'm here for this.
Tláloc, take it away.
Well, I guess I should have raised my hand for that question. I didn't see it, so I'm a little caught
You
off
got
guard. Currently, I am in Boston. I'm doing a project with a symphony for the Super Titles Super Titles LED screen, and I'm also working on an opera at the same time here in Boston about the Sarah Palin and Joe Biden debates, the vice presidential debates, and then I'm off to do La Boheme in Delaware and Baltimore. And then I'm doing a show in New York, which is co-produced with Seattle Opera. So I'll be flying over to Seattle Opera right after that. And things are moving.
Wow.
Very good. Next question.
Todd Tom Hattrick in Dallas, Texas comes up next, and he says, when streaming office hours, are you using 10-bit switching hardware? If so, does it make a difference in the quality?
Alex.
The entire back end, I believe, is all 10-bit or is capable of 10-bit. Obviously, the Zoom contribution is not 10-bit, it's 8-bit. But a lot of the tools are all there in 10-bit. And I don't think that it's necessarily, still coming out, still getting encoded in 8-bit on the way out. Until we move to HDR, it'll still be 8-bit. I don't think that the 10-bit makes a dramatic difference, except for where 10-bit really makes a difference in color is when you're color correcting. So if you need to stretch things around and move things and get them into a wider gamut, or just be able to move things, like a lot of times we'll record in HQ because it has more data there to work with, so that if we want to do color correction later, we have something to grab onto. So 10-bit really has more to do with it's not going to look sharper. It's whether the color is whether we have more room to either stretch that color into HDR or more color to work with in our color correction.
Yep. Next question.
Yeshua Bell in Antigua and Barbuda asks this question: can Companion Satellite be used without a Streamdeck, i.e. with a web browser?
Jeffrey.
The answer is yes. There's a couple ways you can do it. First of all, you could test each button, and each button will react from there. You still have to use a PC. You're still using the companion software. There's still an emulator that you can call up so you can test your buttons. So you go from there. So you could use the emulator. That is one way. The other way is you could go to Streamdeck and get the Streamdeck app and then download that on your phone. And you don't even need to have a Streamdeck there. You can then pair it up with the Streamdeck software and then use the phone buttons on your iPad or on your phone to send it off.
Tláloc.
Just real quick, I wanted to say, I think that it is a little bit more complicated with Companion Satellite because of the fact that you're trying to get connect up to another. It's essentially a different piece of software. It's not Companion as normal. It's Companion Satellite. But because you still have a GUI to work with, you can do that in the same way and throw up the emulator in the way that Jeffrey was talking about. So it's a little bit more work, but it'll work.
Guy.
Yeah, in our cloud production that Jonas had set up, I had the emulator set up just in case, and this was over a VPN. So if you are using Companion Satellite and you have somebody who knows what they're doing with VPNs, you can set it up even remotely. So our data center was on the East Coast and West Coast, and I could have not only my Streamdeck 32 in front of me with all the buttons that they had laid out, but I also had my emulator as a backup just in case on a totally separate machine. So just in case something happened. And only once did I have Companion Satellite glitch out. And I don't know if that was because of the VPN or what, but it was indeed a scary experience to lose control during a show. So just watch what you're doing and test.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the browser. You can also use Companion Pi, which is, exactly the same general framework, but a completely different operating system. So yeah, there are a lot of ways to do this that don't cost really anything. Next question.
Chester Sweeney has our last one for today. Las Vegas, Nevada. Are the Shure Aonic 50 premium wireless headphones a fair comparison to the Sennheiser MOMENTUM 4 headphones?
Alex.
Mickey said no. Different product types, different product lines, different target markets. By reputation, what the Shure is known for is being probably more neutral and more accurate, more rugged, and the Sennheiser is seen as warmer and more consumer travel friendly. So that's what they're known for. I haven't used either of them, so I don't know for sure.
Yeah, and again, hearing and sound and what you like is going to be extremely subjective, and unless you're mastering audio, it's just, it really does come down to taste. Well, that brings it to close, and we've got a lot of great shows, at least to round out the week. Wednesday, tomorrow, we have the voiceover panel, with a bunch of voiceover artists. It's going to be Q&A on Thursday, and Friday, I believe, is another Q&A. So please, by all means, take a look and look at the schedule and contribute in any way you can. officehours.global/donate. And today we did 51,000 miles of traversal, 81,000 kilometers. That is 400 million bananas for scale.
Good work, sir.
Did you have to go all the way to Vegas to get that banana?
The first one I did, and then I got the 6-pack. And that was that. So if you need a banana guy, I've got a USPS flat rate box that's going right to you.
You could do like dual host bananas, both sides.
Oh, Yosemite Sam, yes.
I'm trying to figure out where to put my banana in my setup here, and I was doing that right before the show. I couldn't find it.
B&H sells a $35 thing you just put on the side of your desk. It's just a very specific holder. It's for bananas only in production.
I've lost my banana, which means I can say, yes, I have no bananas. Couldn't resist doing that.
Bill,
I just couldn't resist that. I'm sorry.
Thought it was I lost my marbles, not I lost my banana.
See you guys.
Brady. Bye-bye.